Hi, everybody. My name is Diana Mondragon, and I'm going to present to you about participatory action research. So, what is participatory action research, or PAR for short, because it's a lot easier to say? This paragraph was in one of the articles that Dr. Hansen posted about PAR on Blackboard, and I really wanted to share it with you because there are a few keywords in here that help provide a general overview of the main ideas of PAR and words that definitely stood out to me as I was looking through the different methods and deciding what I wanted to do. So words like power and grassroots movements, transforming, all of that caught my attention. So take a few seconds to give this a skim. The name Falsborda down there in the citation comes from Orlando Falsborda, who was a Colombian sociologist and is thought to be the founder of participatory action research. The other person that's commonly attributed to PAR is a German social psychologist by the name of Kurt Lewin. Kurt Lewin was particularly concerned with raising the self-esteem of minority groups, and his first attempt at a PAR project was because he wanted to develop better communities by helping immigrants who were coming to Palestine adjust and thrive in their new environment. This is a quote that I found, and it really resonated with me both as an educator. I'm a school counselor for high school students, and also just in my personal life and personal endeavors. It really speaks to the importance of being engaged in learning. So I wanted to share this with you as well. These are a few keywords that will come up throughout the presentation, and so I wanted to just briefly touch on them. Social transformation. The process of PAR project involves examining a social issue systematically to hopefully spur social transformation and make a lasting change. Action reflection. Reflection is another one of those words that really hit home with me. Reflection is a daily practice of mine, both in my professional and personal life, and it is a really important piece of PAR. Social justice, change-oriented, and human rights. The person doing a PAR project is probably a researcher who's really committed to challenging unequal power relationships and increasing social justice. And involvement. A PAR project cannot exist without the involvement of people of that location, the local population. It cannot exist without collaborating with people of the community that you are researching. Why would someone use this particular qualitative research method? The goal of PAR is not just to understand, describe, and analyze society, but to also help change it. And that change happens through the active involvement of research participants or the local population. So someone doing a PAR project is a researcher who's interested in addressing different social science issues such as racism, ableism, sexism, heterosexism, and imperialism. All right, so how does PAR contribute to environmental studies? Well, it can help explore how environmental issues impact human health and well-being. So an example of a PAR project could be interviewing Oklahoma residents who've been affected by fracking. As I was preparing for the presentation, I came across an article that suggested incorporating a PAR project within an environmental studies class. It can be especially effective, and I thought that was kind of interesting, seeing as how we're all in environmental studies class. There's some research that suggests educating students on environmental problems. It can actually be counterproductive because it can lead to feelings of apathy and action paralysis among students, so they feel like they can't really act. And I made a connection to the Cronin article we read during our environmental history unit, how he had mentioned in his evaluations, students were saying that they were feeling kind of hopeless, that they understood it was a big problem, but they felt like they couldn't really do anything. So the article I had read for this presentation was suggesting that incorporating a PAR project could make it a more engaging experience for students and help them kind of combat those feelings of apathy and inaction. Once the project has been determined and participants have been identified, the data collection begins. A memorandum of understanding, I put that up top and really tried to emphasize it because it's a piece of data collection that I think is not necessarily what someone might think of when they think of how to collect data, but it's a very human side of data collection, and I'll explain. So the memorandum of understanding is kind of like the introduction period to the project. So getting the researchers meeting with the participants who are known as co-researchers because they are actively involved in the research process. So getting them together, establishing norms, building relationships with each other. And I think that that is an important piece of data collection because you're not going to get people to open up or to actively and genuinely engage if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't feel like they can trust the researchers. So I think that is kind of a piece of the data collection that's very human and that is really important um, in the more kind of obvious techniques. So through like direct observations, hands-on experience, focus groups, interviewing and storytelling, especially, and maps and using maps and diagrams. Without having that memorandum of understanding, I don't think that whatever would be found through these other techniques would be very genuine. It's also important to highlight that the PAR researcher works with the group. They don't conduct research on them, they're working with them to achieve what it is that the group desires. The process for analyzing data of a participatory action research project is this continuous cycle of planning, acting, observing, and reflecting, known as action reflection. So doing the actions, but then reflecting on the observations that are coming out of those actions, whether that's analyzing data or reports, narrative analysis, reflecting on that, and then using those reflections to plan the next set of actions. And it's just this continuous cycle that keeps going to help bring about that social transformation. Some ethical concerns of PAR include unintended harm. It's really important for researchers to acknowledge and accept their outsider status. It doesn't matter how much education they might have on a certain topic or whatever. At the end of the day, they are guests of a community and they should never claim to be more knowledgeable about a certain community. It's also important that researchers aren't making promises to participants about what their participation could lead to or what this research could do for them. And it's also important for them, for researchers, to be clear with participants about the potential impact of participant involvement and the potential risks that come with that. Another ethical concern is just the relationships that are built through these projects. You spend a lot of time with your researchers and your co-researchers, aka your participants, and it's important to set boundaries because we're human, we have emotions, which can sometimes conflict, and it's really important for researchers to kind of set those boundaries early on, but then also at the end to provide appropriate closure, because this probably will be a project, because it relates to so many sensitive social issue topics, where people become very close and they become very vulnerable. And it's important for researchers to responsibly end the project in a way where people feel like they're not being robbed of closure. To wrap things up, if I were playing a word association game with someone, I guess a two-word association game with someone, and they said participatory action research, the words that I would think about immediately would be empowerment and collaboration. And it's interesting because I didn't read the word empower or empowerment in any of the articles that I read to learn about PAR. Um, but just everything that I was reading about how involved the participants would be, allowing them to be part of the research design process and analysis, letting them be co-researchers in a community project is so empowering. And so even though empowerment wasn't explicitly stated anywhere, it's what I think of when I think of a PAR. And it's something that I think will happen in a really good PAR project. And the second word, collaboration, it's such a collaborative process. Participants collaborating with each other and with their community, but also with the researchers. And I think that's really important because I don't think that a social change can happen without collaborating with people in positions of power. And in the case of a PAR project, the researchers would kind of be that person in a position of power. The last thing I want to share is I think the reason why PAR really jumped out at me when I was looking through the different qualitative research methods is because I think in a way I've actually engaged in a PAR project through my experience with alternative breaks and breakaway. An alternative break is when a group of college students go and do a community service project during their school break. Most commonly, it's going to be during spring break. And the idea is if you're participating in a quality alternative break, you're not just going and doing this quick community service project and then calling it a day. There's a lot of preparation that leads up to that week of the service project. So months even leading up to the break, you're becoming educated on the social issue, the root causes of the social issue, the big picture. You're receiving orientation and training on the different skills that you're going to need for that service project. And then when you're actually on your week of service, you're still becoming educated and trained by the partner organization you'll be working with. You're doing your direct service every day, but then you're also coming back at the end of the workday and you're reflecting. You're coming together as a group and you're reflecting on the work you did, your role in the social issue, maybe how you're seeing it differently now that you're doing this direct service. And it just reminded me a lot of PAR and had a lot of similar ideas that PAR does. And I encourage you, I looked it up. UIS does have an alternative spring break program, and it looks like they're going to Puerto Rico in March. So if you're on campus and you're interested, I encourage you to look it up. These are just a couple pictures from the second alternative break that I participated in when I was at Northern Illinois University. We went to Niceville, Florida, and bagged oysters that were donated from local restaurants, and we bagged them and put them in the water to make reefs to create habitat. So it was very exhausting, a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. Okay, well, what is a graduate presentation without hopefully proper APA references? I had a great time learning and reading about PAR, and I'm hoping that you learned something new, and I'm looking forward to seeing your presentations. Thank you.